Welcome to the Medical Manners Podcast, where I give healthcare providers simple tips for ways they can transform the way they connect with their patients and colleagues. Connecting with patients isn't some secret sauce that some of us have and others don't. They're just skills, implemented consistently over time. If you want to transform your medical practice, you're in the right place. I am Katie Wyatt, your host. This episode is sponsored by the Connect Better audio course. This course is for healthcare providers who want to drastically improve their patient satisfaction or press Gainey scores. Each week for 6 weeks, you will listen to a 5 to 10 minute audio training. Then throughout the week, your job is to implement the skills you're taught in every patient encounter. You'll be amazed at how much your score can improve in such a short amount of time. Go to medicalmanners.com and use the code PODCAST for 10% off the course.
I am excited to have Taylor Linton on the podcast with us today. He is a good friend of mine and optometrist. And Taylor, we kind of reconnected over the idea of empathy. And I'm not surprised at all that you are empathetic with your patients because...
Well, we all try, right?
Right. I mean, you're easy to talk to. You're an empathetic guy. But I thought you'd be the perfect one to kind of chat about how to make empathy easy. I think a lot of people who aren't naturally good at empathy have no idea how to be empathetic. And it really isn't that hard. I think there's easy ways to do it. So anyways, that's why I wanted to chat with you about this today.
Yeah, well, I saw that you were putting together this podcast. And the first thing I thought was, wow, this is so needed. Because there's a lot of doctors out there who are just really smart and they're very competent in what they do. But they have a hard time being empathetic and putting themselves in someone else's shoes. And I think you're right. I think there are simple things that you can do or say to help patients feel like, oh, wow, they're actually in my corner. They understand where I'm coming from instead of feeling like, wow, they really didn't care at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't you tell us some of the simple things that you have tried to do in your practice that help you connect with patients better, show empathy, etc.?
When we have to give bad news to a patient, it can be difficult because we're trying to manage the logistics of, okay, am I making the right diagnosis? Am I giving him the right treatment and care? You're trying to check all of these boxes. And the patient is sitting there like, well, wait a second, these are my eyes. What's going to happen? And so one thing, and I can't take credit for this statement because I heard it from someone and I wish I could remember who told me. So if there's someone out there who hears me saying this and they're like, wait a second, that's what I told.
Shout out to them.
Yes, shout out to them. They get the credit. But the phrase that they told me, and it's always stuck with me, was, let us do some of the worrying for you. And that doesn't mean that they don't have a part to play. Like if they're diabetic and they have retinopathy, yes, of course, they have stuff that they have to worry about, right? We can't manage their diet for them. They have to take some responsibility. But like, for example, if there was someone who came in and they've got flashing lights and floaters, those are things that we should all watch out for, right? If you have a new onset of floaters and you're getting flashing lights, you come in and I see, okay, yeah, they actually have a retinal detachment, which is a potentially blinding condition, right? That's something that requires an urgent referral. So the patient is there and we bring them to the front desk after giving them the education and everything. And we'll set up a referral and sometimes even the same day, depending on the type of retinal detachment. Mm-hmm. And we send them out the door with a referral in hand, an appointment time with a retina specialist, and telling them not to eat just in case they have to go into surgery that same day. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that's happening. And frequently in those types of situations, you'll see them, obviously very concerned, maybe a little bit teary. And while we're having the logistics taken care of, we have the front desk coordinating their referral. I like to make eye contact with them and say, I know you're worried, but let me do some of that worrying for you. And it's not just talking about the logistical side, because we are doing that too, but just the mental weight, the emotional load that they are carrying, worrying about their vision, that's something that I can share, right? That's not all on their shoulders. I'm doing my part as a doctor to take care of them. So let me share that load with you. And I love that phrase because it really helps them feel like they're not alone. They don't have to figure this out by themselves. So I feel like that's an important way that we can be empathetic to our patients is help share that mental load that they're carrying.
Yeah. And when I teach my course, when I do the section on empathy, the definition I use is empathy is the ability to understand and share the emotions of another. And so I feel like in such an easy way, you are nailing empathy because you're acknowledging that they're having an emotion, right? Like they're probably worried. They're
Hmm.
probably scared. You're acknowledging their emotion and you even give it a name, worry. And then you're trying to share that. You're trying to ease that burden just a little bit. And so, yeah, I love that phrase because in one sentence, you've shown empathy and like, check, you did it. You
Yes.
nailed it. Anything else that you do in your practice?
Yeah, this is something that I've thought of too, and we're all guilty of this, I feel like, with practitioners. We have stories, right? There are patients that come in, and there are some crazies out there. And it's so easy to close that exam door, walk out there, and tell your coworkers, "Wow, you guys would not believe what this patient just said." Right?
Right.
Uh, but I feel like it is so important that we maintain it, not just professionalism, but even going deeper than that, where how do we talk about the patients behind their backs and how do we feel about them? Because it's one thing to, be talking about them poorly behind their backs and then walk in and be a totally different person. Oh no, I can be empathetic. I think that's a hard coin to flip.
Yeah.
If you're one person outside the door and walking in, and one I'm reminded of one particular patient, we'll call her Jean. I would see her all the time in my previous job, and I would call her God's litmus test to the world because this woman, just to paint a picture, so lots of mental and health issues. She has a phobia of water, which means she would never ever bathe. Comes from a very low income situation and mental health. She would berate anybody who was trying to help her. And she would come in on a regular basis, be so upset that we don't have a minute for her right then. She's a walk-in patient, and she would just yell at the staff, and I'd come in, and I'd know that she would yell at me, and I would just go in there and be like, "Hi, Jean, how are you? Let's go ahead and take care of your eyes." And she, "Well, you never," da, 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 da," and she would just jump in. And it was even hard to get any medication for because pharmacy after pharmacy would say, "We're not gonna service her anymore." She would come in and she would get hostile, like, "We know, we know."
Yeah.
But I was so impressed. There was someone who treated her with so much respect. So she couldn't see well at all. She had terrible vision, and she wanted to always know the weather. And so she would call KSL, which is the
Yeah.
local news network. She would call them, and I'm sure it was so often. She was calling them, asking
Daily,
them for the
probably.
weather.
Yeah.
Kevin Eubank at KSL sent her a big screen TV with a low vision device so that she could see it with enough magnification that she could see the weather.
Oh my
And
God.
I found that out through the grapevine. I just thought that is the coolest way to confront a difficult situation where you have the choice, and that's why I call her God's litmus test. You have this choice of like, okay, here's a person who is being so unfair to me. I am treating her with respect, and I'm trying to give her the help she needs, and she is just throwing stuff at my face. How do you handle that?
Mhm.
And Kevin Eubank is sitting there like, okay, this woman, I'm sure he was yelling at him too.
Yeah.
They're a giant big screen TV with a low vision device so that she can see the weather. What a cool I sent him an email. I was like, "That is awesome. That's how we should confront difficult patients and difficult situations. That's empathy."
Yeah, that is really cool. Being able to see beyond the roughage and like there's a need there, right?
Yeah.
Jean had a need, and even though it's can be tough to get through the aura she brings with her, Jean has
Yes.
a need. This is something, and that Jean is probably a good segue into this. As I train people on empathy, they'll feel like they can't show empathy because they feel fake, because they actually feel no empathy for the patient, because they're rude or
Yes.
they're mad about a situation, like, for
Maybe
instance.
very justified, yes.
Right, like, all of patients call in that want an antibiotic, and they've had a runny nose for a day, and they'll just be irate that I won't give them an antibiotic. So, do I feel empathy for them? Originally, I'm like, "No." you've been sick for a day. I don't feel a lot of natural empathy, right? I think you have to remember that when you show empathy, it does not mean that you always do what your patients want you to do. Like, I don't give my patients an antibiotic who have
That's true.
had sinus congestion for a day. It also doesn't mean that I agree with the patient's emotions or decisions. So I don't have to agree with why they feel the way they do. I don't have to agree with their life choices. Like, I don't have to agree with any of that. All showing empathy means is that I understand that they're feeling an emotion.
You're validating their emotions. I love
Right.
that.
And so, like, I've had a bad night where I'm all congested and I don't sleep well and I feel pretty crappy the next day. And so I can empathize, like, I'm so sorry that you're sick. That's the worst when you can't sleep and you're unable to go to work, you're unable to fulfill your duties, whatever. Like, I can empathize with that. And so I think that's important to remember. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to feel fake. You just have to you have to validate that they're feeling an emotion. And
I
that's
love,
it.
I love it.
And then I listened to this is a challenge I've taken on, and maybe you can too, but I was listening to a book on emotional intelligence and kind of how we can be more emotionally intelligent. And they recommended that instead of thinking, so you'll read a book, you'll watch a movie, and you'll think to yourself, man, what would I do if I was in their shoes? And I'll read books to my children and we'll say, oh, what would you do if you were them, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, this book I was reading recommended that instead of that, we say, how would you feel if you were them?
Interesting.
And I think that's a cool switch. And so I like reading books to our kids. And so I'm going to start, instead of saying, what would you do if you were them, saying, how would you feel if you were that person right now? Because I think
Identifying the emotions.
yeah, and training their little brains and training my brain to get in someone's shoes and to think, how must they be feeling right now? So case in point, my husband ordered a new grill. For Father's Day, I said, our old grill broke. I said, I want to get you a new grill, but I don't know what to get you, so order it yourself, right? He ordered it at Home Depot, and he sent me to pick it up. And so I'm sitting in that Home Depot line to pick it up, and
Okay.
it is so long. And the poor lady sitting there at the cash register has like the fax machine running, the phone's running. She's going crazy trying to help people. And I'm kind of bugged. I'm like, why don't they have more employees out here? Like, why am I standing in line? I've been here forever. Next time I got to have my husband come pick up his own thing. Like, why am I,
Yeah.
I'm like going down this hole. But this was on my mind. And so I was like, I bet that lady is so stressed right now. She can see that she has a big, long line of customers waiting. The fax machine's running, the phone's running. I bet she's feeling so overwhelmed right now.
Yes.
Even just like having that thought, I suddenly wasn't bugged anymore. That's like all it took was to have that thought of how must she be feeling. And then I was like, you know what? I'm good. And it kind of like changed that experience for
Love
me.
that. I love that. I would love to have hanging up in my office somewhere the quote by Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol that mankind is our business. And that's applicable not just, especially for healthcare providers, but just in the world that we live in. That, yes, we have our businesses and we have our day-to-day jobs, but really when it comes down to it, mankind is our business.
Oh, Taylor, I love that. And that makes me want to put that up in my house. That is
I know, right?
that is an awesome thought. And I actually just read that book over Christmas for the first time. I read like the Christmas Carol
The whole thing,
by
yeah.
Charles Dickens. And it's a cool book.
It is a cool book. Yeah, I read that a few years ago as well. I just thought that is something to live by. Kind of zoom out a little bit. It's more than just making a buck. We have a bigger thing to worry about, and that's the brothers and sisters that we live with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like you said, I think no matter what business you're in, and that doesn't matter if you're a healthcare provider caring for people's lives or if you work at Home Depot, really connecting with people is at the core of all we do.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, the best way to support what I do is by rating and reviewing the podcast. Your feedback helps me reach more listeners to make an even greater impact. It would also mean the world to me if you would share it with a friend or colleague who you think could benefit from the topics we discuss. Together, we can transform the way we deliver healthcare by transforming the way we connect. Take care.